Hello and welcome to today's episode, and I thought I'd look a bit back in time. While hunting around for something in the store, I came across a pair of Oktava MK-319 microphones. Now, think back to when Russia was sort of in the middle of the Cold War. They were actually making microphones back then, and not many people here particularly like the idea of importing anything from Russia. And this would have been around about the early 1990s. But trade was becoming possible. It wasn't easy, but it was becoming possible. And I thought about buying one of their large diaphragm mics, mainly because back in the 90s I couldn't afford anything remotely posh or expensive. You know, I was young, I was struggling with money, but trying to buy recording gear like many people do now. And the very first popular one over here was a thing called the MK-219, which was a horrible microphone. Actually, they sounded good. All the reports said they sounded really good, but they were put together. I saw one review describe it as the casting of your motorcycle engine was probably better than the casting of the Oktava 219, and that particular thing had a decent element in it, but it was sort of encased in this sort of Dalek looking half shell design that sort of the two halves went together sort of okay, and a lot of the ones that we saw had been sort of put together and then run on some sort of grinding machine to try and make the castings match. They were pretty nasty things. And then they started to make this 319 available. Black crackle stove enamel type finish, and I used them quite often back then. And then as I got better things, they ended up in a flight case somewhere, and I fell across that flight case today, and there were two of them inside. So this is one of the original ones. Usual switches, so you know you can press the buttons and make things happen, but essentially it's a large diaphragm microphone. The history of Russian microphones goes back to sort of the Second World War, when the Berlin Wall went up. So you had Neumann on one side making things, and on the other side pretty much the same design was then streamed into the Russians' own market, and whilst they sounded quite nice, they were not built particularly well, but I don't suppose that really mattered. They worked. Now this one here, I've just got it out, it's probably 20 years since it had phantom power applied, and it's all right. So I figured what I needed to do was put it up against something similar, so I dragged out a Neumann and put it up against that. So an 87 versus the MK-319. We're listening oddly because I've been doing some other projects here and I've still not managed to get my SM7B back, and I'm going through microphones trying to find one that I like as much as the SM7B. So today you have actually been listening to me on a ribbon mic, so that's what you're hearing at the moment, and it's one that I got a Chinese firm to actually make me to. I mean, they used to be quite easy to get from China and they're not anymore. But I managed to get two of those, so they're unbranded, don't even have a model number on, and I wanted it for the two figure 8 patterns for a particular job, and I managed to get two. I don't think there'll be any more, so I'm not much point talking about it, but that's what you're listening to me on now. So let's switch first across to the 87. The idea is, and I haven't listened yet, but I'm assuming that the 87 is going to sound quite warm, quite nice. You know, the sort of sound you get from an 87 used about that far away. It's a nice mic. The trouble is, as many of my viewers know, I'm totally clumsy and I break things with regularity. So this thing is the only microphone that lives in its original box and is put away every time I've used it. And as a consequence, I very rarely do use it. I still use the 414s through choice, and they sit in a little flight case in the studio here. But the 87 is normally left somewhere a bit safer. I've managed to keep it sort of scratch free, which for me is a bit of an achievement, but there we go. But it's a nice mic, but it's just one that just doesn't really it doesn't sit with my way of using them. Let's try the other one. So now we're on the MK-319. So it's a Russian microphone. It's built solidly. It's black crackle finish. It's big chunky buttons, not the little tiny ones you have to use your nails for on the 87. So it's got two big chunky buttons. Other than that, I struggled a bit to find a mount for it. It's got the usual coarse thread on the bottom, but it's got quite a little slim sort of slide-on nut that goes on it. And I struggled a bit to find a screw-on mount, the Neumann type. God knows where the original one was. I think they just had like a little sort of small stand type thing that was a permanent, like a little sort of right angle bend piece of metal with a hole in it that you just stuck on the bottom and it fitted onto a mic stand. And it's, they're about somewhere. I have no idea where. They'll be here somewhere. But I managed to get it to fit in one of those sort of fits-all type cradles. So the two things are on. We've now been switching about between the two while I've been talking, so I don't know what to make of it really. I always liked these. I had two 319s, and I got two because it was around about the start of the 90s when I started doing orchestral and sort of choir-y type recordings. So stereo recordings, XY mainly is my preferred technique. And I've been using those on and off for the first 10 years. And then sort of when it got round to the sort of early 2000s and I had a bit spare cash, I've been using the 414s since then. Perhaps I should go back to the 319s because I did have a sort of fond spot for them. But they are a sort of very strange looking microphone, and they do look sort of Eastern Bloc in construction. Not remotely sleek and smooth. Chunky and sort of utilitarian is the sort of way I suppose I'd describe them. But anyway, if you ever see any for sale, always worth a consideration, I think, because they were nice microphones. There was a lot of toing and froing, and when sort of things trade-wise eased up, they became more available, but there was some argument as to whether they actually were the same microphones or not, whether it was a different Oktava or whether it was a different microphone inside. I honestly don't know. But they seemed to go out of favour a bit quicker once they became sort of more easily available, which is a bit strange, but there we go. So that's a quick look at the two different microphones, the 87 versus the 319, and you've had a chance to have a listen, and you must make your own mind up. I think they're rather nice, but I thought I'd let you have a listen when I sort of fell over the box this morning. Anyway, see you on the next video. Look after yourselves. Take care.